The laughter echoed through the bright glass atrium just as the woman everyone feared quietly placed a wedding ring on the finger of a man nobody seemed to notice. Within seconds, whispers spread across the crowded charity gala. Executives smirked. Investors exchanged mocking glances. Reporters rushed to capture the strange couple standing beneath the afternoon sunlight pouring through the skylights. They called him a fake husband, a desperate single father hired to protect the CEO's reputation. But before that extraordinary day was over, the quiet man everyone dismissed would uncover a betrayal so devastating that the people laughing the loudest would desperately wish they had never underestimated him. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing community. The CEO's name was Vivian Mercer, a woman whose determination had transformed a struggling technology company into one of the fastest-growing businesses in North America. Every magazine praised her intelligence, yet very few people understood the loneliness hidden behind the polished interviews and award ceremonies. After losing both parents within a few years and surviving an ugly engagement that nearly destroyed her company, she had learned to trust contracts more than promises and boardrooms more than friendships. Her newest challenge had nothing to do with profits. Several board members believed investors would feel more comfortable with a stable family image leading the company before a historic merger. Rumors about her private life had become headlines, and the pressure was growing each week. Instead of rushing into another relationship, Vivian accepted a temporary public arrangement suggested by her attorney. She would appear married for several months until the merger concluded. The man chosen for that unusual agreement surprised everyone. His name was Grant Holloway. Grant was a widowed single father raising his 9-year-old daughter, Hazel. He worked as a maintenance supervisor at one of Vivian's office buildings. Every morning before sunrise, he packed Hazel's lunch, braided her hair after watching endless tutorial videos, walked her to school, and then quietly repaired everything from elevators to broken lighting systems without asking for recognition. Few executives even knew his name despite seeing him almost every day. Grant accepted the arrangement for one reason only. Hazel needed an expensive hearing treatment that insurance refused to cover. The temporary contract would provide enough money to secure her future. He promised himself he would simply do his job, protect Vivian from unnecessary gossip, and disappear once everything was over. Unfortunately, wealthy people often mistake quietness for weakness. The first public appearance took place during a daytime charity event attended by influential business leaders. Cameras flashed continuously while guests admired expensive suits and carefully rehearsed smiles. As Vivian introduced Grant as her husband, polite applause quickly turned into concealed amusement. Several executives exchanged sarcastic smiles after noticing Grant's inexpensive watch and modest shoes. They assumed he had been hired because he looked ordinary enough to avoid attracting attention. Others quietly joked that the billionaire CEO must have rented a husband from a casting agency. Grant heard every word. He simply smiled, thanked the volunteers serving lunch, helped an elderly guest whose wheelchair had become stuck near a decorative carpet, and returned to Vivian's side without showing the slightest anger. That unexpected kindness confused Vivian. Most people in her world answered humiliation with pride. Grant answered it with grace. Over the following weeks they attended daytime meetings, charity visits, factory tours, and community events together. Cameras followed them everywhere, hoping to discover cracks in the unusual marriage. Instead, something unexpected happened. Grant treated every employee exactly the same. He remembered receptionists' birthdays. He carried heavy boxes for warehouse workers without announcing it. He stopped to speak with janitors and security guards. He never interrupted anyone during meetings, yet when he finally spoke, people listened because every word carried quiet wisdom earned through hardship rather than privilege. Vivian slowly discovered the story behind his calm heart. Years earlier, his wife Eleanor had died after a long illness. During those painful months, Grant had sold almost everything he owned to pay medical bills. He had learned that wealth could disappear overnight, but compassion remained valuable forever. Listening to him changed something inside Vivian. For the first time in years, she found herself laughing without forcing it. Meanwhile, another story was unfolding behind polished conference room doors. A senior board member named Preston Caldwell had secretly been manipulating company contracts for years. Small financial adjustments hidden inside thousands of transactions had quietly redirected enormous amounts of money into shell companies controlled by his associates. The fraud remained invisible because every document looked legitimate. Everyone trusted Preston, everyone except Grant. One afternoon, while repairing an air conditioning unit outside the executive archive room, Grant noticed accounting files scattered after a storage shelf collapsed. Having once helped his late wife manage a family bookkeeping business, he recognized something unusual almost instantly. Invoice numbers repeated across different projects, vendor addresses matched unrelated suppliers, approval signatures appeared digitally copied. The inconsistencies were tiny, individually meaningless, together they formed the outline of something enormous. Grant carefully returned every document exactly as he found it. He told no one until he gathered enough evidence to avoid accusing an innocent person. For several weeks he quietly compared maintenance budgets, supplier records, renovation expenses, and archived invoices whenever his work naturally brought him near company files. Every discovery strengthened his suspicion. Someone wasn't stealing thousands, someone was stealing hundreds of millions. At the same time, Preston intensified his campaign against Grant. He privately encouraged journalists to investigate the fake marriage. Anonymous articles questioned Grant's background. Television commentators mocked his ordinary appearance beside one of the country's wealthiest women. The pressure reached Hazel at school, where classmates repeated cruel headlines they had overheard from adults. Grant almost ended the arrangement. He refused to let his daughter become the target of public ridicule. When Vivian learned what Hazel had endured, she visited the school during the afternoon without media cameras. She met teachers, comforted Hazel, and quietly funded new hearing equipment for every child in the district who needed assistance, refusing to place her company logo anywhere on the donation. Grant saw genuine kindness instead of public relations. His respect for Vivian became something much deeper. Still, both understood the contract would eventually end, neither expected destiny to intervene first. The decisive moment arrived during the annual shareholders' meeting held in broad daylight before hundreds of investors, employees, journalists, and community leaders. Preston confidently presented record-breaking financial results while recommending that Vivian step aside after the merger because, according to him, her recent personal decisions had damaged investor confidence. The room filled with uncomfortable silence. Several directors nodded, others avoided eye contact. Grant quietly stood near the back of the hall, exactly where maintenance staff usually waited in case technical assistance became necessary. He carried a simple folder, nothing more. When Preston finished speaking, Grant respectfully requested permission to address the board. Laughter immediately spread across several rows. Some investors rolled their eyes. A maintenance supervisor discussing corporate finance sounded ridiculous. Vivian surprised everyone by approving his request without hesitation. Grant walked toward the front with the same calm expression he had worn since the first day people mocked him. He placed copies of carefully organized documents before every board member. Then he displayed maintenance schedules beside financial reports, renovation invoices beside contractor registrations, building repair requests beside payment approvals. Piece by piece, an invisible puzzle became impossible to ignore. Entire construction projects billed to buildings that had never been renovated, equipment purchased for offices that did not exist, maintenance contracts assigned to companies sharing identical mailing addresses. The room slowly transformed from amusement into disbelief. Independent auditors began checking the documents immediately. Within minutes, several confirmed Grant's findings. The fraud exceeded $1 billion. Every trail pointed toward Preston Caldwell and several outside partners. Federal investigators who had quietly attended the meeting after receiving anonymous evidence stepped forward. The same executives who had laughed at Grant only weeks earlier watched in stunned silence as Preston was escorted from the room. No dramatic celebration followed. Grant simply returned to his chair. He looked relieved rather than victorious. Vivian realized that exposing corruption had never been about revenge. It had always been about protecting thousands of honest employees whose futures depended on the company surviving. News coverage changed overnight. The headlines no longer described Grant as the CEO's fake husband. They called him the man whose integrity saved an entire corporation. Reporters searched for dramatic interviews, but Grant declined nearly all of them. He preferred spending afternoons helping Hazel practice reading after her hearing treatment began improving her confidence. Months later, the temporary marriage contract reached its expiration date. Neither Grant nor Vivian spoke about extending it. they simply continued sharing lunches, volunteering together, visiting schools, and supporting employee families. The friendship they had accidentally created no longer depended on signatures or legal agreements. It depended on trust. One bright spring afternoon, surrounded by employees, children, neighbors, and friends at the community garden the company had built, Vivian quietly removed the original contract from a small envelope. She smiled warmly before tearing every page into tiny pieces. No reporters had been invited. No photographers waited nearby. Only people who genuinely cared stood together beneath the warm afternoon sun. Grant looked toward Hazel, who was laughing while planting flowers beside elderly volunteers. He understood that the greatest blessings often arrive disguised as temporary arrangements. Not every family begins with romance, sometimes it begins with respect, sometimes with sacrifice, sometimes with one person choosing kindness while everyone else chooses judgment. Before we reach the end of this story, leave a meaningful comment telling us what touched your heart the most. Was it Grant's quiet strength, Vivian's willingness to change, or the reminder that appearances can never reveal the truth about someone's character? Years later, employees still remembered that unforgettable afternoon, not because a billionaire had been rescued or because a criminal had been exposed, but because one humble father proved that dignity speaks louder than wealth, compassion outlasts cruelty, and genuine character never needs applause to reveal its worth. Vivian eventually found the courage to trust again. Grant discovered that hope can return after unimaginable loss. Hazel grew into a confident young woman who never forgot the people who believed in her, and the company became known not only for innovation but for treating every employee with equal respect, from the boardroom to the maintenance department. The greatest victory was never the fortune that had been saved. It was the reminder that the quietest person in the room may be carrying the strongest heart, and that kindness, even when mocked, has the extraordinary power to expose every lie. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey.